everyone, I'm Elise and welcome back to my channel. I hope you're all doing so good today. Today is a special video because it's my first ever multi-part video. So it's not vlog level per se, but there is going to be multiple parts because it's going to be a try a chapter video, and the theme for this try a chapter is the oldest books on my TBR. So I don't know for certain that these are the oldest books on my TBR, but I think these are some of the oldest books, and I think maybe the oldest book on my TBR. So that's what we're gonna do today. So in this section of the video, I'll give a synopsis about the books, and then I'll check back in once I've tried the first chapter of all of them. And then depending on the ones that I choose to read based on the first chapter, I'll give you a review of the ones that I actually read at the end of the video. So we'll go ahead and dive right in. The first book that I'm gonna be reading is Rabbit Cake, and this is by Annie Hartnett, and this is published by Tin House Books, which is an indie publisher in the US from Oregon. And I'm hit and miss with their books, so we're gonna see how this goes. This was published in 2017, and I think I got it not long after it came out in paperback, so probably in 2018. It's been on my TBR for 4 or 5 years, and this book is about grief. So in this, the main character, whose name is Elvis, their mother passes away, and the circumstances of them passing away, I believe, are a little bit strange. So I think her family has an issue with sleepwalking, and her mother drowned while she was sleepwalking. And this is about the main character, Elvis, trying to deal with their mother's grief. I believe they're very logical. So they're trying to come at grief from a logical perspective and say here's the amount of time that I'm allowing myself to grieve for. But also she's contending with the grief of her father and her sister that is also presenting itself in somewhat strange ways. So I believe her sister is also struggling with sleepwalking, and they are potentially poisoning themselves while they're sleepwalking, and then her father starts showing up dressing in a bathrobe or something like that, and she's not sure why that's happening either. So I think this will be a really interesting take on grief. The sleepwalking aspect also has me intrigued, so I'm curious to see what this one has in store. The next book that I'll be reading for this try a chapter video is Everything I Never Told You by Celeste, and this is by Penguin Books, and you can tell that this book is old because it's by Penguin Books. This was before the merger was completed with Random House, and this was published in 2014. So this book is also about grief, but it's kind of flipped around. So in this book, we follow a family again, but we're following a mother and a father whose daughter has died, and they sort of had rested a lot of the success and hopes for their family on this daughter. They're an immigrant family from China, and the daughter dies, and it's how the family, mainly her parents, deals with her death. It also, I think, contends with them not really fully knowing who their daughter was, and they're uncovering some secrets about who she is as they're learning more about her death. And in that way, this kind of reminds me of Ellen and Nose by Claudia Pinheiro that I read earlier this year. So I'm intrigued to see if there's actually a comparison there. But yeah, this one also dealing with grief, but I think there's maybe more of a mystery element to this, so we shall see. But I'm excited for this one. And the last book that I'm gonna be trying out in this video is, I think, the oldest book on my TBR, and that is The Rise and Fall of the Scandamerican Domestic, and this is by Christopher Merkner, and this is published by Coffee House Press, and this is a collection of short stories. So this might be a bad idea to do it in a try a chapter video, because it's I don't think the stories are interconnected. So I guess if I like the first story, then I'll continue on with it. But this follows a cast of characters that are set in the Midwest, I believe. I'll read you some of the synopsis of the stories from the back. Since it's a short story collection, it would be hard for me to summarize, I think, without having read it. So this says that there's a story about an enraged village that gaslights tourists that come to town. There's a story about a boy who is trying to confess something to his mother that may or may not have something to do with a pig, which there's a pig on the cover, so not sure what's happening there. And overall, it kind of sums up the stories as offering stability and identity and comfort, which are precisely the qualities that set them back, pull them down, burden, limit, and ruin them. So I'm really intrigued for this. I talked about this in another video, but I was interested in this when I saw a review for it in the New York Times like 10 years ago, I think, and or close to 10 years ago, and I just thought it sounded great and wanted to pick it up. So picked it up and then never read it. So we shall rectify this in this video. So those are the 3 books that I'm going to be trying out the first chapter or first story. And then if I like them, I'll continue on reading them and give a review of them. So I will see you in a little bit once I've read them. Okay, so I have read the first chapter of each book, and I'm gonna go over them now. Just give like a little synopsis of what I learned in each chapter and what I'm thinking about it so far. So the first one is Rabbit Cake. This was the shortest first chapter. The first chapter was only 5 pages, and in the first chapter we basically learned that the main character's mother has died, and that she believes that her mother has died in like not the way that she was supposed to die, whatever that might mean. I'm not sure if that means she has suspicions about the way that she has died, or if it's just like not what she envisioned and she feels odd about it. There's also like this bad omen about a rabbit cake, which is the title of the book, that like they cook these rabbit cakes for special occasions, and it's just a cake in the shape of a rabbit. But right before the main character's birthday, they make the rabbit cake and it's burnt, and the mom says like, oh, that means that you might not have a good year, and then her mom dies. So this one was intriguing. I liked the writing style. It's from the perspective of the main character, whose name is Elvis. I believe is 9 years old. Let me check. So the main character is 10 years old in this. So liking this one so far. I am going to continue with this one. I like the voice of the narrator. I'm very intrigued about it, so we'll continue on with this one. The next one is Everything I Never Told You by Celeste, and these 2 books are similar, so this might not be the best to read back to back. I might try and read some stuff in between these this month, because this one starts off with Lydia, who's the daughter of this Chinese-American family of 5, and she is dead, but the family doesn't know that yet, but you know that. It's the first line of the book. And they find out that she is missing, so they're reporting that she's missing and trying to figure out where she is. And then you slowly start to hear from each family member's perspective, so the mom, the dad, the brother, and the sister. And each of them is kind of grappling with what they know about Lydia, and the brother and the sister both know things that the parents don't know about her, so they're sort of thinking through those things and wondering if they should say something, but worried about telling their parents because their parents didn't really seem to know her. So this is also really interesting. I like the multiple points of view of this. It definitely feels more like a mystery than Rabbit Cake. So I'm intrigued about finding out the mystery of what actually happened to Lydia. which I think we'll get as the story unfolds. So I am going to continue this one as well, and this one's very short, so I might finish this one first. But that is Everything I Never Told You. And then the third one was just like fucking bizarre. I don't even know what I read in this. Like, the first story was 25 pages long. I should say the first chapter of this was also 25 pages long. This one, whoa. How do I even describe what happened? So I will say, after I read this and was so confused about what I had just read, I read the blurb on the front, which says, Chris Merkner, who's the author, is the happiest, most disturbed, certainly the most happily disturbed writer I know. And that is a great way to describe this. I would describe the first story as disturbing, like truly disturbing and just bizarre. So the first story follows a narrator who's like a teenager, maybe a young man, and he's in his mother's kitchen, and you're getting his thoughts, and you start to realize that he might have killed his uncle, his mother's brother, and he's sort of thinking about the events that happened last night, which involved his uncle, and things are slowly unfolding, and then he's wondering if he should tell his mother about them. That is all kind of very disturbing. The way that he tells it, he is a very cold, almost narcissistic narrator, and it's creepy. And then on top of that, just to add more confusion to the mix, I don't know, he has his mother's pet pig like in his lap while he is talking to her, and she's kind of going on and on about the pet pig. She loves the pet pig, and he's thinking about the pig, and his thoughts are very disturbing. Like, again, I'm going to use disturbing towards the pig, and that takes a turn throughout the story, and that's all I'll say about that. So I don't know how I feel about this one. That is not where I was expecting this to go. I was not expecting it to be so dark. I think it's supposed to be like dark humor. Not what I was expecting. So I am going to read at least the next story and see what the next story is like and go from there. But this, I might not finish this if I don't like the next story or the next couple of stories. I'm probably gonna DNF this one. So we'll see where this one goes. But yeah, that's the first chapter, everything so far. I am definitely going to continue reading these two. And then I'm gonna read at least one more story of this and see where we end up. And I'll let you know what happens and my thoughts about the books overall. All right, we are back. So I have read maybe all of the books, we'll see. And I'm going to give you a little review on what I thought of them. So the first one we'll be talking about is Rabbit Cake, and I did finish this one first. So this one I liked but didn't love. The things that I enjoyed about it were the conversations on grief. So there's lots of complicated feelings that each of the family member has, and grief manifests itself in very different ways in each of them. And I thought that was really interesting and also apt that many people grieve in many different ways. So I really enjoyed that aspect of it. I really enjoyed the use of animals throughout the novel. So rabbits are a big deal throughout the novel, and rabbit cakes kind of show up throughout the novel. Dogs play a huge role in the novel, rats, parrots. I mean, there's lots of animal stuff going on here. And I thought they did a good job of incorporating that into the novel. And the things that I maybe didn't love was one, the narration. So this is narrated by a 10-year-old child, and sometimes that really works for me. I'm not against that inherently, but in this specific instance, there were inconsistencies in the 10-year-old that I just found unbelievable. And I mean that in the sense where the 10-year-old is basically a genius, and that's also okay, but it was like the 10-year-old would be a genius in certain ways and like realize and notice all of these complex emotional things that were happening in her family members, but then would also do like very, very silly things herself, and that just didn't compute for me. It was like, I don't understand how one instance she can really understand complex emotion, and then on the other instance she doesn't understand at all. So I didn't like those inconsistencies. That kind of bothered me, and I couldn't totally suspend my disbelief in that. But I think the narrator is likable. She's really funny. There are lots of jokes and sarcasm throughout the book, and she kind of is necessary as a plot point in order for the other characters to exist. So her older sister is pretty troubled, was maybe like pretty troubled even before the mom passed away, and then starts acting out and lashing out at her, and kind of gets involved in some criminal activity at one point. And then the dad is just like severely depressed, and has also kind of replaced his dead wife with a parrot who sounds like her and has her voice, and just isn't really moving on and coping well, it doesn't appear. So she's kind of like holding the household together as this 10-year-old, trying to do the best that she can. And she also is reconciling with her like strong connection with her mother over animals. They both had a deep love for animals, and she's trying to figure out what role that plays in her life now that her mother has passed away. So all those things I thought were great. The one main issue with me was the inconsistencies with the narrator. It kind of took me out of the story in some moments when I felt like there was discrepancies. But overall, I thought this was good. The writing was great. So I have another book on my shelf by Hartnett, and I'm definitely going to pick it up. And it's called Unlikely Animals. So there might be like animal themes throughout their work. I'm not quite sure. But definitely interested in picking it up, and overall would recommend this. If you like stories about grief, if you like stories about animals, and if you like kind of a sarcastic, maybe slightly unrealistic narrator, I think that this would be a really good fit for you. So that was Rabbit Cake. Okay, the next one that I read was Everything I Never Told You, and this one I really enjoyed. So I liked this slightly better than the last one. I really enjoyed it. I wouldn't say it was like perfect for me. There were a few things that I didn't love, but overall the writing is stunning. It's like so smooth. It's like butter when you're reading it. Really easy to follow along, and it flows really well. So I appreciated that. And I have read, Little Fires Everywhere by this author, and I did give that 5 stars and loved it. So definitely love the writing style. This also follows a lot of grief. So Lydia has passed away, who is the eldest, so who is the eldest child in the Lee family. I believe in the Lee family. And again, each person is dealing with this a little differently, but this is different in the sense that it follows each person's point of view, whereas the previous novel only follows the youngest daughter's point of view. So this follows all of the POVs in the family. And this one is much more of a mystery. So you're trying to figure out what happened to Lydia, and each member of the family has some knowledge about Lydia that the rest of the family doesn't know. And so each of them is trying to piece together what actually happened without communicating with each other. So you slowly get a story of who Lydia actually was, and maybe realize that nobody in her family fully knew her and understood her. This does a really good job of talking about like pressure and expectations that your family can place on you, and also this like realization of lost dreams that parents can put upon their children. So both of the parents in this novel have some discontent about their own youth, and maybe even to the level of like regrets about their life growing up, and heavily push their unrealized dreams onto Lydia. So she feels an extreme amount of pressure to be someone that she really isn't, and to make them happy. And the other two siblings, she has a younger brother, slightly younger brother, and then a significantly younger sister. The brother has always been sort of her confidant and has always seen her for who she is, and seen the amount of pressure that her parents have put on her, and she gets a lot of comfort out of him. And he also has some resentment towards her because her parents like clearly love her so much and place most of their attention on her. So there's some resentment there. And then the youngest sister is again kind of very emotionally aware for someone so young, and she really plays the role of an observer in the family and has a good sense of emotions, and feels like she starts realizing that Lydia is maybe faking her emotions and something is actually wrong with her leading up to her death. So this one's definitely more of a mystery. There's like a little bit of suspense in here. It's not like a thriller by any means. But the other one was like definitely more contemporary family drama, and this one has a little bit of mystery element in. So I enjoyed that about this. It kept you wanting to turn the pages to see what was happening and to see like what the family members were going to uncover. My main issue with this book is the end. So the end wrapped up a lot of loose ends very quickly. Like in the last 10 pages, there were about like 5 or 6 loose ends that were tied up, and the tonal shift that I felt happened didn't work for me. So most of the book, there's a certain tone. It's like a somber tone, like a regretful tone. And then the last 10 pages were like weirdly optimistic to me, and it didn't make sense. I felt like it was way too abrupt, and if that was going to be the ending, we needed to kind of go on a little journey to get there. So that is my one issue with the book, and why I didn't give it 5 stars. I'm giving it 4 stars. Is that the ending was just like, the tonal shift was too abrupt for me, and it felt out of place. But otherwise, absolutely loved the writing. It was a great story. It definitely very intriguing, and you wanted to keep turning the pages, and explored a lot of difficult topics. There's also like exploration of what it's like to be an immigrant in the US, what it's like to be in an interracial relationship, and the difficulties and challenges that can arise from that. And also what it's like to be a sibling in a family where each sibling is maybe treated uniquely, and what that might do to a family. So this was really good. I really enjoyed it. And the last book is The Rise and Fall of the Scandamerican Domestic. And this was a fail for me. So I have officially DNF'd this book. I read up to page 57, which I think is like the first 6 stories from here. Let's see, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. First 5 stories. So I read the first 5 stories, including the title story, which was the 5th story that I read. And this just didn't work. I knew that if I finished this, at best it was going to be 3 stars, and that's like if the rest of the book was good, it was going to be 3 stars, but in reality it was probably going to be a 2-star if I finished it, and that's just not enough of a reason for me to keep reading it. So this book, I kind of alluded to in the first story, is pretty depraved, and I would say depraved with like a bit of dark humor to it, which sounds good, and I've liked stuff like that before, but for me personally, in my reading taste, I need there to be a point to it. So like I kept reading and I was like, but for why? Like, why are we doing this? What am I supposed to be getting out of this? And I just could not understand what I was supposed to be getting. I'm sure it was going over my head, and there's probably a reason. I just was not getting it. And there were some shorter stories that were almost like flash fiction length, and I did like those 2 the best, but still like wasn't sure what I was supposed to be getting out of them. So the like title story in this is about a man who like needs to buy his child diapers, basically. Like his kid is telling him he needs diapers and he just refuses to buy them, and he's very like detached and cold and kind of just unrealistic, and just keeps telling his kid like no, we're not doing this, like that's what's gonna happen, and like feels nothing about that, which it's just like I don't get why. And it's like 3 pages or something like that, and I'm like, I'm not sure what I'm supposed to be getting from that. I have no idea. So this one didn't work for me. It's a DNF. I'm not gonna try and finish it, but I do think this probably has an audience out there. If you like things like Mother for Dinner, which I actually did enjoy, but I think that has a similar tone to this, where it's pretty dark and humorous, but you might need to know something I don't know. Like something wasn't computing for me, so who knows, this one wasn't for me. But if either of the stories that I talked about sounded interesting to you, you might want to pick it up. All right, so that is this try a chapter video. So 2 successes, I would say, and 1 fail, but that's okay because I read some of the oldest books on my TBR. I'm very happy that I did it. So let me know if you've read any of these books and what you thought of them. I'm particularly interested, like if anybody out there has read this, please tell me what I'm missing or what's going on with this. But if you've read any of them, let me know what you thought. And also let me know what your oldest book on your TBR is. I'm very intrigued. So that's all for this one. I'll see you guys in the next video. Bye.